know what they are. You know, mixed principalities, you gotta know what they are. Those kinds of things he is sort of going to be setting up here in the first chapter. So it may seem just sort of bean counting and button sorting, but it's something he wants to let you know about. So let's get started. Chapter 1, page 6. All states, all forms of government that have and continue to have authority over men have been and are either republics or principalities. So he divides the world into two kinds of political organizations. Republics, by which he means, and he'll use a couple of different synonyms for republic, because we think of republic as sort of a specific kind of a government these days, where you have the citizens elect representatives and the representatives rule on behalf of the citizens. He means by the term republic all kinds of what he would call self-rule, or people who rule themselves. And this allows for direct democracy, republic, and other kinds of, let's say, representational government. So when he means republic, he means all kinds of self-rule. The governed have a voice in how they are governed in some sort of an official way, either through elections or such things as that. So that's what he means by republic. Everything else is a principality. Principalities are not necessarily ruled by princes in the hereditary sense of the word, but they are hereditary governments. So let's say principalities for him are one person rule, or at least there is nominally one person rule, and those who are ruled do not have a voice in how that person behaves. There is sort of no way in which they can have direct or official, or let's say institutional feedback on the way they're ruled. So principalities ruled by one person, or typically something like one person rules. Sometimes that person will delegate, but still there's identifiable chief or head or ruler. And then republics are just all forms of self-rule. Got that settled, I hope. That's sometimes it's important to let you know what he means by these terms, and he will use different sorts of synonyms upon occasion. I'll try to alert you to them when the synonyms are there and when he means something different from what it seems he means. So there we start. And principalities are either hereditary, where the ruler's ancestors have long been their rulers, or they are new. So now we have another subdivision of principalities. You have hereditary principalities, where there is a line of succession. A family's been in charge for a long time, not necessarily a long time, but a long time, like in England. Let's assume that the royal family has any power. I think Queen Elizabeth has only the power to spend a lot more money than she should, but really not any sort of legislative power. But if there were power in Buckingham Palace, then that would be a line of succession. That would be a hereditary principality, where the royal family has been established for many generations, and that's one. Other things would be new, which means every prince that is not a member of a lineage is trying to establish that. That's sort of his you might say his assumption, that if you are a prince, if you're a ruler, you're trying to make the rule permanent for you and for your family. You would like to have, that little sprout that's your son or whatever it be, or your daughter, take over after you snuff it or get assassinated or get killed in battle or something of that sort. So the thought that he has is every principality either is hereditary, or the new prince is trying to establish a line of heredity starting with him and moving on through succeeding generations. So that's, and if you think about it, that's probably it. He's going to also make distinctions between, it'll be a more subtle distinction. He really won't make it as a subdivision, but he'll make a distinction between these kinds of princes and people who are, let's say, strong person rulers who are just in it to, let's say, to plunder a territory and then move on. He doesn't consider them princes rightly described, but it'll take a while for him to get into this description. And I think when he finally starts little by little, and will by chapter 3, start giving you some ideas of what he considers a legitimate prince, I think you'll at least have some reason to see why I think there's a moral core to his concept within the book. We'll get to that when it gets there, but I'm trying to give you a heads up as to what we're going to find. And if they're new, they're either entirely new, as Milan was for Francesco Sforza, or they're like limbs added onto the hereditary estate of the ruler who acquires them, as the kingdom of Naples been added to the kingdom of Spain. That's an interesting subdivision as well. There either are brand new, or a new prince, sort of never done any ruling before, establishes himself in a territory and says, okay, I'm the boss. Or an old prince sort of attaches some new territory onto his old principality. Now, he is a new prince, and this principality, this new addition, is new in the sense that this person has never ruled over it before. But it's also sort of an adjunct to, or an extension of, his existing kingdom. Again, Ferdinand of Spain is an example there, fairly well known in his time. Those dominions that are acquired by a ruler are either used to living under the rule of one man or accustomed to being free. Now, this is just the same division he had before between principalities and republics. If you're either used to having one person rule over you, so now you just meet the new prince, same as the old prince kind of a thing, or it's a territory that used to rule itself. It used to be a republic. It was used to being free. When he says used to being free, he means used to being accustomed to self-rule or being a republic. All of these three things are synonyms. He doesn't quite establish it that way right off, but in fact it's exactly what it is. So there's another subdivision, sort of referring back to the earlier subdivision. And finally, they're either acquired with soldiers belonging to others or one's own. And the whole problem of soldiers is going to occur in the middle of the prince about what kinds of armies to have, what kind of armies not to have, what kinds of armies are dependable, what kinds are not. His assumption is, and in his time that was the way it was, that a prince must in fact be a military prince. That you have, if you're, he said, one thing he has an interesting, he says, unarmed prophets find an early grave or something like that. So if you have a prophet, by that he means someone who is establishing something new or imagines something new. If you don't have an army, you don't have a military presence to back it up, you're an ex-prophet and actually an ex-human, because you then a corpse. So he says you have to then be wary that certain kinds of armies are worthwhile, certain kinds of armies are worth less. And finally, I said that one's finally, but this is the real finally, that acquired either through fortune or through strength. Now these are two important things as well. By fortune, he means luck. You know, this, not a flip of the coin as much as just, sometimes turns of events, the chaos of life suddenly makes you a prince. Hasn't made any of us princes, I'm guessing, but I guess in those worlds, he'll talk a little bit about some ways in which this could happen. So that you can either get it through luck or by virtue, by strength of character, by strength of will, by having the kind of character that makes it possible for you, through your skill, to be able to become a prince, to take over a new territory. So he's now subdivided out the world that he is interested in describing more fully and offering the pluses and minuses of it. So that's chapter 1, pretty quick chapter, but we just, as I said, a manner of categorizing things. So let's look at chapter 2. Chapter 2 is on hereditary principalities. So we talked about hereditary principalities. Those are the ones in a line of succession. I will leave behind me the discussion of republics, where I've discussed them at length elsewhere. Now the odd thing is, if you accept the view that this book was written before his discussion of republics, which probably was written between 1517 and 1519 or so, something like that. So if you take the view that this, we certainly know that this is written in 1513. This is pretty clear about when this is written. There's some ambiguity about when his discourses on Livy, which he's referring to here, were written. Most historians now seem to think it was in the latter part of the decade in which he wrote this. And so it's odd for him to say, I've already written about this elsewhere, when he was going to write about it 4 years from that time. It seemed like he probably went back and revised this chapter a little bit just to make it seem as if he's already written the book, or maybe he's just pimping that book. I don't know. But at any rate, that's his story, and he's sticking with it. I will concern myself only with principalities. Oh, that's it. That's what this book is called, The Prince. It's only about principalities and the people who lead them. The different types of principality I have mentioned will be the threads from which I will weave my account. Yes, nice language. I will debate how these different types of principalities should be governed and defended. So that's another part of his view. He's going to try to not just describe them, but say, if this is what you're intending to do, this is a good path to take, this is a bad path to take, this is what this path will likely result in, this is what this other path will likely result in. So that's good. I maintain then that it's much easier to hold on to hereditary states, which are accustomed to being governed by the family that now rules them, than it is to hold on to new acquisitions. Remember, we had that division at the beginning. Hereditary states, new territory, new principality. He says it's much easier to hold on to hereditary ones. Now, there are a couple of things that we need to keep in mind here. This is the first time he talked about holding on to a territory. And it's truly crucial to, I think, his view of what a prince needs to do is that a prince, a powerful leader, a general, whoever it is that is the leader, should have, and he believes this is a part of what makes a prince, should have the view of being in it for the long haul, for whatever territory he acquires. If he acquires a territory rashly, or just because he wants to plunder it, sort of level it to the ground and move on and find the next territory. For Machiavelli, that's not a prince, that's a pirate, or that's a thug, or that's a robber. That's not a prince. A prince is there for the long haul. So when he says to hold on to it, he assumes that if you're a prince, you're going to only attack and attempt to obtain a territory if you're committed to the long haul. Hold on to it and essentially make it your place, to make it either your place or a part of the larger kingdom of which you're the ruler. So that's an important sort of a hint, and this will come back so often. It'll be something of a refrain. Again, if you want to hold on to it, if you want to hold on to this territory, that kind of stuff is always going to be there. And it seems clear that he means that as a way of distinguishing between people with powerful armies, or even just who can quickly move through and plunder and pillage and then move on to the next place. For him, that's not a prince. A prince is a ruler that has a certain commitment to being there in the long haul. Again, I'll go back on that sentence here. I maintain that it's much easier to hold on to hereditary states, which are accustomed to being governed by the family that now rules them, than it is to hold on to new acquisitions. Now, when he talks about holding on to hereditary states, he is saying, let's assume you are the next in line of succession, that your old man or your old lady, whatever it may have been, was the previous king or queen, and either they died or you killed them or did something, something happened, in the time of Florence in the 16th century. Could have been any of the above. And so if you, for somehow you now become ruler, he says this is what he means by becoming the principal hereditary state. That you are next in line. It's a legitimate succession from your father or mother, or maybe your older brother, uncle, whatever it may have been, to you. So that's what he's talking about. He says these are easy to hold on to. This is like having a big bag of cash dropped in your lap. All you have to do is don't screw it up. I mean, this is easy. It says all one has to do is preserve the structures established by one's forebears and play for time if things go badly. Now, both of those things are reasonably important. One, preserve the structures means that every kingdom that's been around for a while has institutions been set up by the ruling family. Institutions having to do with courts and laws, different kinds of whatever deals with the citizens, with whoever deals with the subject. The subjects have to have a certain kind of a structure which they can depend upon, and not just courts and law and police and things like that, but nearly everything that the kingdom accomplishes for its citizens has to have been done not just by edict of the king, because the kings really would find after a while, this is getting to be a pain in the ass to be a detail person. Why don't I have an institution that takes care of these details? I'll oversee the institution. Or if I'm really smart, I'll get my idiot brother-in-law to oversee the institution, and I can just go out hunting and do the kind of stuff I like to do. So that every hereditary kingdom that's been around for a while must have these institutions, or else it's got some, some obsessive, compulsive royal family that has to keep their fingers in all the pie and stuff like that. So he says, that's probably not it. Royal family are not going to be overachievers. They're going to be expecting other people to overachieve for them. They don't have to overachieve for them. That's what it means to be a bleeping prince. other people do it for you. So he says, this is easy business. And the second thing he said, play for time if things go badly. He's talking about the transition. Typically, there's a transition between the death of the old king, we hope not under suspicious circumstances, and then the new king comes in, takes power. In that transition, there can be some difficulties. Maybe the new king, say that, for instance, the old king died suddenly, unexpectedly. The next in line really wasn't adequately prepared to be king or to be prince or whatever it happens to be. As a result, there'd be sort of a learning curve that would have to take place. The institutions and the structures will help with the learning curve. He said, play for time if things go badly. Means if there is a rough transition, just wait it out, because the structures and the institutions will take care of what they're supposed to. And eventually, you'll get you'll get on the train yourself, and everything will work fine. So he says, if you happen to inherit a kingdom, it's Miller time. That's it. You've got nothing to worry about. As long as, and he'll now mention, the only thing you may have to worry about, and there ain't much, is that for indeed a hereditary ruler be no more than normal resourcefulness, will never lose his state, unless some extraordinary and overwhelming force appears that can take it away from him. So that if you're just okay, you've got, first of all, you got the structure and the institutions. One other thing you got is, in some sense, likely the goodwill of the population. The reason you have the goodwill of the population is they put up with your family for this long. And even if your family isn't, the most warm-hearted bunch of people, as long as they keep things reasonable and don't do anything really terrible to the population, everybody will say, yeah, they're good people. We like them. Glad we're here. So that you've already got a whole backlog of goodwill from the population. So you don't have that much to worry about. So he says that all you need to be is just mediocre, and you can be a fine king, because you already have the goodwill of the people and the institutions that will run the country for you. You don't need, there's only one other kind of country that runs itself for you. He'll talk about them later, about chapter 9 or so. So that's, this is a good deal. Don't screw it up, he is saying. And, even if an overwhelming force appears, that overwhelming force has to be really good, because with one misstep, they can get out of there, because the people, he says, in most cases, citizens don't want change. The citizens want stability. Now, the people who are vying for power, they want change, because they think they can improve their lot by getting closer to the prince or closer to a new ruler. But the people, and that's the majority of the people, they want stability. They want things the way they were. They want things to be, to allow their life to move on in a calm and predictable way. And that's your job as a prince. You have to deal with a whole lot of people who are looking for power. But as long as you can keep the citizens believing that life is going to be just fine, that the sun's going to rise tomorrow, and the crops will still be in the fields, and there'll still be money in the banks, unlike in Cyprus, and there are lots of other things, will be normal. If you can do that, then no invader has a chance, because an invader will threaten a great deal of just overturning of all the stability you have done a great deal to, and your family, I should say, has done a great deal to establish. And there's the Duke of Ferrara. He drives a nice car, even back in 1513. Actually, I should now make a note about how Machiavelli uses illustrations from both contemporary Italy and from the ancient world. I'll spend a little time talking about it in two ways. One, what you can expect on the test from what will eventually be an avalanche of examples. You've probably already seen in chapter 3, we read that far, and I did assign you to read that far, and so I'm certainly hoping you have. But you will find that he wants to use examples from contemporary Italy, more, let's say, as a way of making examples relevant to his contemporary readers, but also talk secondarily about the need to unify Italy, the need to look for great rulers that even exist in our presence or have been with us in the last few years. Here's some great people. But also, he also wants to offer some examples of horrible people. You never want to have them, lead a St. Patrick's Day parade, let alone a kingdom. So in the contemporary world, you'll see both examples, and he'll be pretty clear which is this an example it is. But he is trying to encourage his people with the contemporary examples to choose a prince that will unify and lead Italy. With the ancient examples, he really is a fan of the ancient times, often called the pagan times, when men were men, and it's a kind of a thing where princes had these noble virtues of strength and power and courage and all that kind of stuff. And he wants to look back there, because he is interested in ancient history, particularly the history of Rome, but not just Rome. He'll talk about Alexander the Great very early, and people from Greece as well. So there will be a lot of examples, both from the ancient world and the contemporary world for him, of leaders, both good and bad, for you to sort of have examples of, I told you this is what's going to happen. Well, it happened to the Duke, or it happened to Alexander, or it happened to Hero of Syracuse, or someone like that. And you'll see there's these nice examples from history. Now, I'm going to gloss over most of the examples from history. So there will be very few examples from history on the exam. But I will talk about a few of them because I think they're relevant in lots of ways. And some of them are just cool. I think it's chapter 5 or 6 is from Godorco. Oh, what a guy. Anyway, there's some interesting people in it. So I'll be glossing over, leaping over a lot of the examples from history. You may do the same and not have to worry about them being on the test. I would like you to read them, particularly if the point he's making is one that you can't be sure you'll understand well. Perhaps the examples will help you understand it a little better, and I hope it will. My main interest is having you understand the concept, the arguments, and the philosophy, not necessarily the history. If the history helps you understand those things, the concept, the content, and the philosophy, then read the history. It can be useful, I think. Other than that, only when I sort of delve into some of the historical examples will you need to know it with any kind of certainty. Now back to chapter 2, and we'll leap over the Duke and his and Pope Julius. Pope Julius apparently had a really bad case of jaundice. You probably didn't know this from history, but I'm a learned man. He apparently had a very bad case of jaundice, which is where the term Orange Julius came from.
Wouldn't it be yellow Julius? Wouldn't it be yellow Julius?
Close enough.
Or not. Yes. Just seems right to me. Then I've always learned that what seems right to me seems wrong to everybody else. And that includes law enforcement. For a ruler who inherits power has few reasons and less cause to give offense. By giving offense, meaning, pissing people off. You have no reason to do it. You just started as ruler. And second of all, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's maybe the great rule for a hereditary ruler. And it ain't broke. Why ain't it broke? Because you just succeeded to the bleeping throne, you imbecile. It ain't broke. Thus, don't fix it. Don't go out of your way to rile up people, to change their routine, to levy new taxes, or to switch people around. That doesn't make any sense, he says. So that you have less cause to give offense. As a consequence, he is more popular. And as long as he does not have exceptional vices that will make him hateful, it's to be expected he'll naturally have the goodwill of his people. Now, being hated, he says, that's something you ought to avoid. Being hated and having hateful vices. If you decide, as you have now taken command, that the first thing you want to do in public square there is to have your pleasure with frogs and ferrets, you will find out that probably that's something hateful, that people will find that's a kind of an extraordinary vice that is almost unforgivable. And maybe, in fact, is unforgivable, particularly to the ASPCA or whatever group that you happen to offend by having your pleasure with frogs and ferrets. So as long as you don't have hateful vices, as long as you don't become despised because of the kinds of character traits and behavior you exhibit, you'll be fine. I mean, little vices, or even pretty prominent vices, are okay, as long as they don't make people hate you. Now, we're going to distinguish, he's going to distinguish later on between being feared and being hated, and also being feared and being loved. And that's a really nice little triumvirate there. And of all of them, he says being feared is the only one that's worth a damn. Really don't be hated. If you're the prince, you can't be hated. That's going over the side. That's going over too far. Don't aim for being loved either. It'd be nice to be loved, but if you're going to be a ruler, you need something more dependable than love to bind you to your subjects. Fear. That'll do it. They certainly fear you. Don't make them hate you. Hating is taking it too far. Love is stupid. Fear is the only thing that works. Oh, he'll get to that later. But when he's talking about doing things which are hateful, he's saying if you do things that makes people are just repelled by you, then you're going to have a tough time. So don't do that. Or if you're going to do it in the castle when no one's looking or something like that. So get a whole supply of extra frogs and birds. If you need to, and just do it in private. I don't have a thing about frogs and birds, by the way. It's a nice phrase, frogs and birds. Frogs and birds. I like alliteration. So I could have used two other words. I don't know. Skunks and skinks. That's nice too. Except skunks. So, okay. Skunks and skinks. Okay. Frogs and birds. Much better. He don't actually have the good rule of his people. Because the state belonged to his family from one generation to another, memories of how they came to power and motives to overthrow them have worn away. This is a wonderful observation. Something he says in his subtle way. Sometimes you'll read this stuff and he seems so blatant. He seems to just smack you in the face with nastiness. And then sometimes he's just so nice and subtle it almost passes you by. This is one of those nice subtle little lines where he wants to remind us that every hereditary principality came about initially through violent means. You had to overthrow and kill a lot of people, or a few people, important people, the right people. There's blood on every throne, and it's not from hemorrhoids. It's from the fact that every principality that came about through any means whatsoever came about almost certainly through violence. Now, if you're in the line of succession, unless you killed your old man, you probably didn't have to resort to violence. But to change that royal family and how that royal family came into power, it had to do something to get into that seat of power. Your great-great-great-great-granddaddy had to have been an SOB. But he says, you know, everything's gone now. Bygones are bygones. People have forgotten how you came to power, how your family came to power, and all the reasons for hating you and resenting you because you're just the latest of that wretched family. They've all sort of disappeared into the mists of history. I think of it as, you know, I've been married so many times that when we have a reunion of all my ex-wives, it's really a love feast. It's really quite wonderful. Except that I've only been married 3 times, and one of them's dead, so there's only these other 2, but that makes for a threesome. That's sort of nice. But the important thing is that I have no bad feelings about the dim mists of history of my marital life, and that all the terrible things that seem to happen, that seem to cause this breakup, now sort of get washed away, and only feel the sort of the good vibes of, oh, she was a nice person. Oh, wasn't that nice? It wasn't fun to this and that and the other thing. All that, and that's exactly what Machiavelli is saying. That there was this wonderful cartoon in the New Yorker about 10 years ago, where a man and a woman were talking probably at a party, and the man was saying, I'm very lucky. All my marriages have been happy. And I think it's a wonderful cartoon. And that's sort of what he is saying here, that, eventually it'll seem like all of your history has been quite wonderful, unless you're just a resentful SOB that can't forget stuff. In that case, seek professional help. You can become much better adjusted after the 3rd or 4th divorce by saying, that wasn't so bad, was it? And, have my people call you. So that's what he's saying, that people will forget how your family came to power, and they'll have nothing but the good feelings of, isn't it nice now? And he says, good, capitalize on that. Don't give them reason to look back and say, well, that son of a bitch is just like his great-granddaddy, and then you get into bringing back old gripes and old grievances. Don't do that. Don't give people an opportunity. And you give people an opportunity when you piss them off, or people get the feeling that this transition is not for the better, but for the worse. So whatever you got going for you, accentuate the positive, keep the negative behind castle walls. And he says, for every change in government creates grievances that those who wish to bring about further change can exploit. He's talking now about people that have, let's say, have an appetite for power. He's not talking about mainly the peasants, let's say the citizens. There are people, there are always people, typically in the upper classes, people with a lot of money and a lot of influence and too much time on their hands, that when a transition occurs, these are people saying, how can I capitalize on this? How can I get closer to power? How can I get something out of this change from the old man to the young man? And he says, if you allow for disruption to occur during the transition, you only encourage people who don't have your interests at heart, but have their own selfish desire for power at heart. Don't give them a chance either. The smoother and the more complete the transition is, as if it's almost like you're just a carbon copy or a clone of the old man, the better off you'll be. And so that's Hereditary Principalities. It's the easiest game in town. In fact, it's the only, well, okay, there'll be two easy games in town. This is the first easy game in town. If you happen to have been born ready to pick up the throne, you are one lucky son of a bitch. So let's move on to the less lucky ones now. Chapter 3. New principalities are the ones that present problems. New principalities are ones in which you have come into a territory and you have established yourself as a new prince when there was an old prince, or establish yourself as a new prince when they were used to governing themselves, or you sort of extended your territory out to this new territory and sort of try to amalgamate it into your old kingdom. So you may be a brand spanking new prince, or an old prince getting some new territory, or God help you if you try to take over a republic, but that'll come up a little later. First of all, if the whole of the principality is not new, or rather a new part has been added onto the old from the natural difficulties found in all, first of all, from the natural difficulties found in all new principality, you get an instability, this kind of a mixed territory. And so he says, that's something to worry about. He says, the problem is that people willingly change the ruler, believing that change will be for the better. When he's talking about the people, he's talking about the people, let's say, again, who tend to like to be close to power. Often he talks about the people, we need to distinguish between the people that are always going to be sort of meddling in the prince's affairs, and just sort of the common citizen that works in the fields and lives in the thatched hut or whatever it may be. These are different people than the people he's talking about now. Here we have people, they willingly change their ruler, believing the change will be for the better, and this belief leads them to take arms up against him. But they're mistaken, and soon they find out in practice they've only made things worse. He says, and this is a great lesson. It's a lesson he's going to teach. He says, first of all, people, we've left the hereditary stuff behind. Now you're sort of a new prince, either in a new territory or a territory that's new to you at the very least, that people are going to help you. Because everybody, at least people with, let's say, with power, influence, and maybe their own little private armies, which you had in those days, people are going to say, we make a change. I can make out here. I can really move up the ladder. I can either make more money. I can get closer to power. Lots of different things. So people will support and lobby for change because they think it's going to make things better for them. And he says, inevitably, they're wrong. It doesn't make things better for them. And in the short term, it makes things worse for them. And so he says, now you got two people that are pissed off at you. Two classes of people that are pissed off at you. The people you overthrew are certainly pissed off at you. The old prince and the old prince's family, the old prince's retinue, his advisors, etc., all the people that made a good living off of being connected to the old prince, you overthrew him, and they are pissed off at you. And the people that support him, monetarily, militarily, etc., these are people that are pissed off because they're out of power. But the people who supported you, they're pissed off too, because they thought things were going to get better. By better, it means that they thought they would quickly start to reap some profit from supporting you. And what they find out is, not only are they not reaping profit, things are not very good for them either. And he has a wonderful way of saying it. This is, it's pretty good. This is near the bottom of page 7, about 4 lines up. Thus you make enemies of all those you have given offense in acquiring power, and the supporters of the old regime. In addition, you cannot keep the goodwill of those who have put you in power, for you cannot satisfy their aspirations as they thought you would. In other words, they thought as soon as he gets into power, and we helped him, I'll be the ambassador to Belgium and you'll be the Secretary of State and something like that. And it turns out you're not getting squat. And so you're pissed off. The people you overthrew are pissed off. There's nobody happy. That's one of the reasons you have to have a big-ass army. Because initially, at least, you're not going to have a bunch of happy people. But he says, in almost all cases, for this to be a success, you needed people on your side. You needed allies from within to help the process go. But now, the allies are seeing you, well, the ingrate, that son of a bitch isn't giving us jack. And now they're sort of pissed off too. So he says, ain't nobody happy yet. The citizens might be happy if there isn't too much crime in the streets. But he says, that's not really happening. In order for this to be a takeover, which is what it is, frankly, there have to be troops in the streets. There have to be soldiers being billeted in people's houses. I mean, you can't get away from that. It's not a good thing. At the same time, you cannot use heavy-handed methods against them, for you're obliged to them. The people who help you get into power, you can't just sort of massacre them all and say, hey, thanks for the help. I mean, that probably, it's not that it's sort of nothing immoral about it. It's merely sort of not very prudent, because the fact that you needed them to get into power means you may need them to stay into power. But you can't, like I said, they have outlandish thoughts of what they're going to get from you. And if you reward everybody at the level they think they deserve, you won't have any power at all. You have given all your power away to other people. That's not a good thing for a prince to do, because then suddenly you are the ex-prince because you've got other people who have more power than you. So this is a rock and a hard place. But it means it's solvable. But he says, don't think this is all going to be just easy sailing. Here we got Louis XII, if you like Louis. I like crab Louis. I made some really good crab cakes this weekend. Almost no filler, all good blue crab, not that fake shit that you buy at Price Chopper. Real blue crab, a lot of it. Just big, fat piles of blue crab. Okay, it's got Old Bay seasoning. Good with that white wine. Anyway, I just have to remember. Boy, that was great. So let's move on and sort of talk about Milan. I don't think I want to. A lot of great fashion houses there. You can see my fashion doesn't really keep up with the time, so I don't need Milan, and Milan doesn't need me. So let's go about a little almost 2/3 of the way down page 8. Let me start by saying these territories that are newly added on to a state that is already secure in the possession of a ruler are either in the same geographical region as his existing possessions, speak the same language, or they are not. I said, now I have another distinction here. If you're sort of adding, if you're not the new prince, but you're adding territory onto your existing kingdom, there are two ways in which you can do it. Let's say two circumstances. One is you're sort of annexing something that's nearby, and they have the same traditions, the same culture, the same language. They are in proximity, and so that's one situation. So actually, it's the best of all situations. The other one is, when the language is different, the culture is different, the food is different, and it's located somewhere else. So that in that case, you have a different set of problems. So let's look at both of the problems, and both of the situations. When they are, in other words, when they're nearby, same language, same culture, same everything. When they are, it's quite straightforward to hold on to them. Again, holding on to them becomes really a crucial concept. Hold on to them, especially if they're not used to governing themselves. So that little sort of a sidebar there. If they're used to governing themselves, in other words, if you are coming in and trying to make a kingdom out of a republic, you are in deep doo-doo. So we're going to save that for much later in the deep doo-doo chapters. This is sort of the shallow doo-doo chapters. And shallow doo-doo is still doo-doo, but it's not deep doo-doo. So if this is what it is, then you don't really have too much of a problem. Give me an example. Prince Barack of Obamaland decides that because of global warming, there's really no good place for our citizens to have a summer vacation, because it's all getting too hot. So he decides, being that he is Prince Barack of Obamaland, and because he has now confiscated all of your weapons, as you well know, just joking here, then he's going to enact Saskatchewan from the Prince of Canada. And so, I mean, it's right next to us. They sort of speak the same language. They say a lot of but we can cure them of that. And their beer is not worth a shit. You know, anybody who's ever had Molson knows. You know, we need to have a missionary from Boulevard to go up there and teach them how to brew bleeping beer. But other than that, King Barack, or Prince Barack, sends troops up there and just seizes the territory from the Prince of Saskatchewan, and now it's a part of the United States, or of Obamaland, and that sort of be an example. Same language, more or less, same traditions, more or less, same kinds of things, different flag, but the hell, we can get rid of that maple leaf flag. I mean, actually, you know, maple syrup is pretty damn good. If we have a better supply of maple syrup, that'd be good for this country, I think. I personally would like to have more maple syrup in this country. So, write to Prince Barack and tell him that would be another plus. Plus, you know, he could have the summer White House up there where it really is cool, and you know, this is a win-win situation. So, what's Prince Barack got to do to hold on to Saskatchewan for future generations of Americans? Because there really isn't. There's not going to be, the transition will be pretty simple, with, you know, a few modest things that have to be done. In order to get a secure hold of them, one need merely eliminate the surviving members of the family of their previous rulers. Now, this is a nice sort of a simple phrase, but make sure you understand what it means. It means massacre. This is one of his first kill 'em all statements. Now, he doesn't say kill 'em all, but he essentially says kill 'em all. He doesn't say it in that sharp, shrill way that I say it. But there are lots of ways in which he's going to say it. The only thing you can do is to kill every relevant person. And here we have a ruling family. Ruling families have to do with succession, which means even the youngest ones have to be killed. The old ones, yeah, kill them too, what the hell. Kill them all. Get rid of that family. I mean, that's what Prince Barack has to do. Goes up to Saskatchewan, find out who the prince is, find out all of his family, wipe them off the face of the earth. If you don't do it, you're in trouble. He'll make this point later. There's in the history of Russia, there was when the Romanov, the royal family were overthrown, all of them were sort of massacred. Although there is a belief that Anastasia, the young daughter, was able to survive the massacre by the Cossacks or whatever the hell it is that killed the royal family, and there almost became a cult of sort of expatriate Russians living in other countries, sort of saying, if we can only find Anastasia, we can put her back on the throne, we can return to the days of the czars and all that kind of stuff. You will give unnecessary comfort and encouragement to people who want to return to the old family if they believe some of the old family still lives. Make certain that doesn't happen. Make it prominent, make it certain, make it relentless. Make certain everybody knows you may have to display the bodies. That's fine. Do what you got to do to make certain nobody is left. Otherwise, you are just asking for trouble. No, that's step one. Kill them all. Step two is kill some more. No, just kidding. You know, I sort of get that, some real steam build up when they kill them all stuff, and I sort of get blood in my eyes, and it's, in fact, are we allowed to carry weapons? Teachers at community colleges in Missouri? I hope not. I don't trust myself. You know, when I'm reading this Machiavelli stuff, I get to sort of imagining I'm a prince of the classroom, looking for the hereditary royal family here. Okay, so that's what he says. First of all, in other respects, one should keep things as they were, respecting established traditions. And this is really a nice thing. If they have the same traditions as your people, don't change it. Change as little as possible. You've got, it's again, it's sort of a meet the new prince, same as the old prince, except the old prince of his family is dead. But the most important thing is if it was being run fairly well, and you have the same, again, religion, customs, traditions, language, change them. Change as little as possible. As little disruption of the ordinary life of ordinary people as you can manage is the best way to do it. If you can do that with as little disruption as possible, then the transition will be pretty easy. You do have the one thing, you gotta kill the entire royal family, but after that, don't make waves. Don't make things worse for yourself than it needs to be. And he gives some examples here in France. Top of page 9. He who acquires territories in this way, intending to hold on to them, again, intending to hold on to them, he is reiterating this relentlessly. And he means you to understand that's what a prince does. Needs to see to two things. First, he must ensure the previous ruler has no heirs. Second, he must not alter their old laws or impose new taxes. By impose new taxes, he's just morally saying, keep things as they were. Don't suddenly say, okay, now everybody owes me their firstborn and 50% of their income or something like that. No, keep things as much as they were before, and you'll do fine. But when you acquire territories in a region that has different language, different customs, different institutions, then you really have problems. And you need to have great good fortune and great resourcefulness if you were to hold on to them. Now, by great good fortune, you have to have some luck involved. And again, fortune and luck is just that, things have to go right for you. Sometimes they don't go right, even if you have loads of virtue. That's what resourcefulness means. You have to have virtue, you have to have skill, you have to have the ability to cope with situations you maybe hadn't been expected to cope with. But in addition to that, you have to have luck. So he is warning princes, if you're going into an alien territory, away from where you live, with different everything, think twice. Because if the deck is not stacked against you, you certainly have much more obstacles to deal with, or many more obstacles to deal with than you did with a simple annex Saskatchewan kind of a situation. One of the best policies, and one of the most effective, is for the new ruler to go there and live in his new territory. Even if you happen to be, say you're king of Spain, and you're picking up Sicily, which is apparently what had happened. Spain and Sicily, Sicily's an island, Spain's on the continent, different language, etc. He would say, if you really want to hold on to Sicily, King Philip or King Ferdinand, or whoever it may have been that was there, go and live on Sicily. If you're really committed to holding on to the place, then that's got to be you've got to do that. And there are a lot of good reasons for it. Part of it is a symbolism, obviously, of saying, I'm serious about this. I'm not just in here to plunder and leave. I'm here, I'll set up a castle, I'll set up a government, I'll set up institutions here, and make certain that people know that you are identifying yourself with the territory. But there's also some practical reasons other than just symbolic reasons as well. This will make him makes his grasp on them more secure and lasting. I'll talk about a certain Turkey in Greece. All the other measures he had taken to hold up the territory would have been worthless if he had not settled there. That was the Sultan of Turkey. For if you're on the spot, you can identify difficulties as they arise and can quickly take appropriate action. Keep in mind, this is a time in which communication was on horseback at the fastest. And if you happen now also not just to be on a land route, your main territory to this new one, but if it's across sea, then it's going to go a lot slower. Communication is going to go a lot slower. And the ability to get information quickly when problems arise, rather than 3 or 4 months later, you hear, hey, there's a problem over there in Sicily. Oh, that was 3 or 4 months ago. Sicily may be in flames by now, and you'll never know, or who knows what. So be there, deal with problems as they arise, deal with them quickly and decisively. If you're not there, then you really can't depend on your underlings doing it. He'll talk about that in just a second. If you're at a distance, you'll only learn of them when they have become serious, when it's too late to put matters right. Moreover, if you're there in person, the territory will not be plundered by your officials. That's a pretty interesting thing. Almost inevitably, if you're not there to rein in your officials, they will plunder, loot, pillage, they will take everything they can because you're not there to rein them in. So you are there and they'll do what you say, or they will be ex-officials and maybe again ex-living officials. And the subjects can appeal against their exactions, the exactions of your officials, to you, the ruler. The ruler will be there. You can make your underlings accountable to you. You can't. If they're 4 months sail, you can't make them accountable for squat. And they can get away with a whole lot before you hear about it and then, send a ship of people back to, take their hides. By that time, they've moved on and done something else. So that's a reasonably important thing. As a consequence, they have more reason to love you if they behave themselves. If they do not, more reason to fear you. Here's love and fear coming up, and not the last time. The sense that, if this, and we're talking more about the citizens now, if the citizens realize you're committed to them and you're not going to let them get screwed around by your underlings, then they'll love you more. They will say, hey, this is a good deal. If they are themselves not particularly good people, then you're on the spot and they have reason to fear you. They have reason more to love and fear people who are right there who can both either reward or punish them quickly. And so that's one purpose for being there. If you're far, far away, they have no reason to care one damn about you one way or the other, because you're not around. You're not around to feel good about. You're not around to fear. You got nothing going for you. So he believes that you're foolish if you don't do this. Anyone who wants to attack a territory from without will have to think twice. So if you live there, you will be indeed unlucky to lose it. So there we go. That's you live there. Sort of move the castle to this new place, at least temporarily, until you got the place under control. Everybody is acclimated to the new customs, etc. And speaking of the new customs, here comes his second option. He's offering 3 options of holding on to this sort of this alien territory at a distance and very different from your original territory. The second action policy is to send colonies to settle in 1 or 2 places. By colonies, he means people from the original homeland, to set up sort of almost not like commune, but some neighborhoods that will essentially be a part of what will essentially be the new language, the new traditions, the new culture, because you're going to essentially try to import, or let's say export from your old country, elements of that culture, etc. So you bring colonies out there and establish them as areas of the new order. And that's if you choose not to live there, then here's the second. He says, still not a bad idea. The second action policy, send colonies to settle in 1 or 2 places. They will serve to tie your new subjects down. For it's necessary either to do this or to garrison your territory with a substantial armies. Colonies do not cost much to run. He's thinking the colonies can essentially become self-supporting. And so you don't have to keep feeding them cash from the motherland. You can eventually have them sort of be self-supporting, as essentially any country should become self-supporting by its activities. Set a manufacturing colony, set up a colony that does the kinds of things that the home country did, and eventually make it sort of self-supporting. Armies are not self-supporting. Armies are a drain. Armies will just suck the life out of the country and out of the treasury. And it's a lose-lose situation. Armies are important, but he thinks that they have uses and they have misuses. And this would be a misuse. But back to colonies. You'll have to lay out little or nothing to establish and maintain them. You will offend only those from whom you seize fields and houses to give to your settlers. And they'll only be a tiny minority within the territory. So you're going to have to obviously confiscate territory and farms and even maybe portions of towns. He says, fine. I mean, you're not going to do it to everybody. You're just going to do it to a few. And these few will be a small number and they'll be powerless. And so, who cares? We're just, get them out of here. I mean, you don't have to kill them. We're not talking about killing them. Let's say, make a fuss. It's just, seize their stuff and scatter them, as he would say. These whom you offend will be scattered and become poor, so they'll be unable to do you any harm. Pretty good, you scatter them. Don't let them all go into one place and have this resentful government in exile or culture in exile they'll set up in some other place and sort of feed each other's resentment. No, you scatter them so that they don't have anybody else to bitch to. And it seems as if to everybody else there's only one or two malcontents who got kicked off their farms and maybe they deserved it. And so, good for you. You will offend only those from whom you seize fields and houses to give your settlers, and they only be a tiny minority within the territory. Those who you offend will become scattered and become poor, and they'll be unable to do you any harm. All the rest will remain uninjured, and so it ought to remain quiet. You're not hurting anybody else, and you're saying, well, hey, I'm okay. Sorry about poor Bob and his wife, but I'm okay. That's good. I dodged one there. But there's one more thing here. He says that they'll be afraid to make a false move, or they will have before them the fate of their neighbors as an example of what might happen to them. It's very important for you to spare these people, but to also make certain they know what happened to their neighbors. And if they keep quiet, it may not happen to them, and so maybe that will encourage them not to complain about what happened to their neighbors, and there won't be that many neighbors to complain either, so you're home free, pal. I conclude such colonies are economical, reliable, and do not give excessive grounds for resistance. Those who suffer by their establishment are in no position to resist, being poor and scattered, as I have said. Pretty nice. Everything is, generally speaking, the country isn't greatly affected in a negative way. The few people who are greatly affected in a negative way are unable to do any harm. And everybody else is maybe relieved that it didn't happen to them, and also cognizant of the fact that it could have happened to them, and that you're powerful enough to scatter them and make them poor. Nobody wants that. But now we have one of the first of his many great proverbs. There's a general rule to be noted here. People should be either caressed or crushed. There you go. If you do them minor damage, they will get their revenge. But if you cripple them, there is nothing they can do. If you need to injure someone, do it in such a way that you do not have to fear their vengeance. So that's a sort of a nice bit of advice. If you have to hurt somebody, hurt them bad. If you don't have to hurt them, then caress them. Be nice to them. Be good to people. If you don't have to hurt them, don't hurt them. He's not saying hurt everybody because you're the prince and you can bleeping get away with it. He is saying that there may be some people you don't have to hurt, and so treat them nice. But if you do have to hurt somebody, hurt them bad, real bad. No other way. But if, instead of establishing colonies, you rely on occupying army, it costs a good deal more, for your army will eat up all your revenues from your new territory. As a result, your acquisition will be a loss and not a gain. And to a certain extent, he is talking here about there has to be economic good sense, as well as other kinds of good sense, in attempting to take over a territory. If you haven't been able to calculate what it's going to take, what it's going to cost, what you're going to get, then you're not a prince. You're just a pirate going out there, well, let's see what I can get out of this place. No, you have to be well prepared. That's a part of virtue. That's a part of virtue. It's a part of being resourceful, is knowing when you ought to conquer a place and when you ought to say, this ain't the place for me. If you know the difference, then you can become a successful prince. If you don't, you will again become the late prince. And probably nobody wants that. So back to the soldiers. They're not going to do anything good for you. As a result, your acquisition will be a loss, not a gain. Moreover, your army will make more enemies than colonies would. For if the whole territory will suffer from it, the burden of moving from one place to another as the troops are billeted, burst here and there. You've got the army in the streets. You've got troops everywhere. And you have to, in those days, what you do is they don't have dormitories or barracks. When the army moves through a town, the army goes into people's houses and said, okay, I'm staying here for 3 days, you don't like it, talk to the prince about it. And that's the way it was. It's through your house, and that's, there was one of the amendments, I can't remember, sort of one of the ones that's not talked about anymore in our Constitution about not sort of billeting soldiers in your house. That was sort of forbidden. Third Amendment? So Jack says it's the Third Amendment, and I don't know any better, so I'm guessing you're right. So that sort of a thing was so common in those days, and then of course into the Revolutionary time, that is greatly disruptive. I mean, it's bad enough if you got troops in the street and tanks moving up and down. That's pretty bad. But if the soldiers are living with your daughters or whatever it happens to be, because that's the only bedroom you got, that's not a nice thing. And so he says, that is something you've got to avoid, because then everybody suffers. You know, with the colonies, only a few people suffer and they're powerless. Here, everybody suffers and everybody's pissed off. You're not going to get anything but ill will out of an occupying army. An occupying army almost never does you any good and costs you a bundle. People are pissed off. Everybody's pissed off at you. So, not a good thing. If that's what you're going to do. He's trying to make a strong case against it. Okay. Everybody suffers as a result, and everyone becomes your enemy. And these are enemies who can hurt you, for they remain, even if beaten in their own homes. That for him is a real important thing. When you scatter people, take away their property, take away everything, you take away their self-respect, you take away their identity with who they are and what they are. But I mean, you can't do that with everybody, or else you just really don't have a territory. Actually, he will offer an exception to that. There is a time when, of course, you can do that. But if you're trying to hold on to a territory and you're using soldiers, you can't just wipe out towns and villages. You got to allow the people to, or else you won't have anything when it's over. So what you got is people who retain a sense of identity, of self, of place, and they're pissed off at you, the new prince. And so that's what he talked about, you know, but they're in their own homes. And that gives them a sense that this is my place. Where the hell did he come from with his damn soldiers? And these are people en masse who can do you a lot of damage. In every respect, then, an occupying army is a liability, or colonies are an asset. In addition, anyone who finds himself with a territory in a region with different customs from those of his hereditary possessions should make himself the leader and protector of neighboring powers who are weaker than he is, and to set out to weaken his powerful neighbors. That's a really nice point, that you're going to be in territory you're not familiar with. You're trying to take over this one territory. It'll be surrounded by other principalities and other countries. He says, here's the rule. Find the weaker and make them stronger with alliances, with help, with aid. Make weaker ones stronger and make strong ones who might be rivals to your power, who might think that if anything goes wrong, I'll step in here and take this over. Make them weaker. Marginalize them, separate them out, do whatever it takes to make the strong weak and the weak strong. That's the whole point. Then you have people who are beholden to you. The weaker, the formerly weaker princes are getting an opportunity to ally themselves with a strong prince. And who wouldn't do that? And your rivals are being deteriorated in power and prestige and everything. And he says, you don't want any more rivals. And so weaken them, strengthen other people. And the more you strengthen the weak, the stronger you become, because you have, first of all, their IOU, plus you just have a larger number of people on your side, soldiers, money, etc. All kinds of good things happen here. So we have a bit of talking about ancient Rome and Greece. There's an interesting point he makes, however, on page 11. The Romans did, this is about a quarter of the way down, it's not about the Romans per se, but it's a larger rule he wants to make. It was a very, very good rule. The Romans did in such matters what all wise rulers would do, so an example of that before. It's necessary not only to pay attention to immediate crises, but to foresee those that will come and make every effort to prevent them. That's virtue. That is the ability to be able not just to deal with what's happening now, but to recognize that in a few months, this other thing is likely to happen, and I'm going to deal with that now, while I get a chance, before it becomes a real crisis, rather than a potential crisis, which can be cured much more easily. For you see them coming well in advance, and you can take the appropriate action to remedy them. But if you wait until they're right on top of you, then the prescription will no longer take effect, because the disease is too far advanced. In this matter, it is as doctors say of consumption. In the beginning, the disease is easy to cure, but difficult to diagnose. After a while, if it's not been diagnosed and treated early, it becomes easy to diagnose and hard to cure. That's it's a great example of disease, but also it's a great example of him. That's the difference between virtue and someone just flying by the seat of their pants. You fly by the seat of your pants, and eventually it'll catch up with you. So you have to have enough foresight to be able to see problems on the horizon and deal with them when they're small. If you wait until them to catch up and bite you in the ass, your ass may not be big enough. So he also says that don't postpone war. He says that near the bottom of page 11. If you know war is inevitable, don't postpone it. The more you postpone it, the more you allow your enemy, the people you're going to fight, to prepare. And because they'll eventually, you assume that the enemy has a prince involved as well, and they'll be thinking, it's going to come to a head with this guy. It's going to happen one of these times. If you have enough resourcefulness, you can see it well ahead of time. Don't postpone a war that you can win quickly, even though it may not seem to be one that has any immediate reason for it. If you see a war is inevitable, fight it on your terms. Don't let it build up until suddenly you're at a disadvantage. Typically that will happen. If another country sees the same thing, that it's inevitable that there will be a war, then they'll build up, and the war will either be at their advantage, or at the very least it'll be difficult for you to win. Fight early preventative wars. Don't be afraid of that. Fight wars when they are small and you can win and cut off the problems of big wars. Long talk here about King Louis. And King Louis was, I guess, an interesting guy, but I think the final thing we're going to talk about in chapter 3 here is sort of at the very end, after we talked a little bit about Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander, what a guy, talking about mainly doing things to help other kingdoms become strong and to weaken other kingdoms as well. He's talked about this just a few pages before, but here's how he sort of summarizes it at the end. It's about the last 6 lines of chapter 3. From this one can draw a general conclusion that will never or hardly ever be proved wrong. He who is the cause of someone else's becoming powerful is the agent of his own destruction. By powerful, it means powerful enough to become a rival to him. You strengthen weak people. Don't strengthen them so much that they become your rival. You weaken people who are your rival and keep them weak. But if you miscalculate and you end up engaging in policies that strengthen an already considerable rival, you just shot yourself in the ass. He says you must always calculate who to strengthen and who to weaken. Don't strengthen rivals, weaken rivals. So he makes his protege powerful enough either through his own skill or through his own strength, the protege's skill and strength. And either of these must provoke his protege's mistrust once he has become powerful. So if you make someone too powerful that they're a rival, it's your own fault and you fight for dust. For next time, read 4 through 8. There's no long chapter 3 like in here.